This is not Subnautica 2. This is a game that's currently in development called Atlas Reactor, and it's being made by the same people who made Subnautica. I played it for 3 hours this week at a preview event, and while it does look similar, it's very different under the hood. So let me tell you what I think of it after some time away from the preview build. Okay, so first of all, I want to be clear that my experience with Subnautica was pretty limited. I actually didn't beat the game. I got pretty far, but I had to stop playing because I just couldn't bring myself to kill the Reaper Leviathan. I am a coward. But I did play enough of the game to understand why so many people loved it. It's a wonderful blend of exploration, crafting, base building and survival that just makes you feel like anything is possible in its world. It never felt like there was anything holding me back from going further or trying something new. So when I heard about their new game, Atlas Reactor, which takes place in the same universe as Subnautica and features a lot of the same art style, I was immediately interested. The biggest difference that I noticed right off the bat is that this is an online multiplayer game, whereas Subnautica was a single-player game. There is no story or real plot here. You just spawn in and start exploring. That doesn't mean there isn't stuff to discover, though. There are still plenty of secrets to uncover, such as this creepy abandoned space station that I found. The game even has a research scanner similar to Subnautica that lets you scan plants and creatures to learn more about them. Learn that the chum is apparently an omnivore that can eat both plants and animals. Look at him go. The preview build has a total of 4 biomes: the desert, the grasslands, the swamp, and the ocean. Each one has a bunch of unique plants and animals and resources to gather, and each one feels distinct and memorable in its own way. For example, the swamp has these tall reeds that you can walk through, and it's really cool how they move around you as you move through them. There are also these little frog-like creatures that sit on lily pads and just stare at you. I wish there were more of them in the game. They're super cute. And then the ocean has these giant jellyfish that I really like the design of. Also the whales, they're super cool. I even got to see a pod of them breach out of the water, which was awesome. They're probably my favorite creature in the entire game so far. There's also this massive squid monster thing that will chase you down and eat you alive if you get too close. But honestly, I don't mind, because its design is so sick. Atlas Reactor also has a day and night cycle, but unlike Subnautica, there's no sleep function. So basically, time just keeps moving forward whether you want it to or not. This means you need to be prepared for whatever the night brings. For example, during the night, aggressive creatures become more active, making it harder to gather resources and tougher to fight back against predators. Your base becomes vulnerable to raiding by hostile creatures that are looking for a midnight snack. And the weather becomes much harsher, causing erosion to your base's foundations and weakening its overall structural integrity. But it also means that you have less competition for resources, since other players might be less active at that time. So there are benefits and drawbacks either way. There's also some pretty gnarly weather events that can occur, like sandstorms and lightning strikes, that will damage your base if you don't protect yourself from them. A big part of the gameplay loop is gathering materials to craft tools and upgrades to better your base and your gear. Tools like the pickaxe and the sword are really important because the basic ones you start with are not gonna last forever. They have durability, and once it runs out, the tool will break and you'll need to make a new one. That's why gathering materials is so important. You want to gather as many resources as you can so that you always have the ability to craft new tools and upgrade your base. If you run out of iron, for example, and your pickaxe breaks, you won't be able to mine any stone and things will start to spiral downhill from there. That's kind of the survival aspect of the game. You need to stay sharp and always be thinking ahead. Speaking of bases, you can build some pretty large structures. In my preview build, there was no limit to the size of the base that I could build. So theoretically, I could build a massive sprawling structure if I wanted to. But there are some limitations. Each foundation piece costs resources to place, and you also need to account for the types of terrain that you're placing on. For example, if you try to place a foundation on the ground in a sandy area, it will sink into the sand and become unusable. That's why sometimes it's better to use supports instead of foundations, depending on where you are. There are also different tiers of foundations and walls that you can unlock, which offer different levels of protection. For example, the Tier 1 wood wall offers no protection from any predators, whereas the Tier 2 stone wall is thick enough that most projectiles will just bounce harmlessly off of it. That said, there are some enemies that can break through your walls if you don't fortify them properly, so beware. I don't want to go too in-depth with the combat, but it's definitely a lot more action-oriented than I was expecting. It feels closer to something like Fortnite or Minecraft than it does to Subnautica. There are a few different weapons in the game that you can use, like bows and swords and guns. But my favorite is the chain gun. It's a powerful weapon that shoots rapid firebolts of plasma that deal heavy damage to anything that gets in its way. With enough ammo, you can mow down entire herds of animals in seconds. Just don't run out of ammo, because then you'll be in trouble. The gun does take some skill to use properly, though. It's hard to aim, and it's easy to waste ammo if you don't practice. But once you get the hang of it, it's really satisfying to use. Another interesting aspect of the game is that there's no hunger or thirst meter like in other survival games. Instead, you have this health bar that depletes whenever you take damage, and the only way to refill it is by using healing items like bandages or potions. This means that you need to keep a constant supply of healing items on hand at all times, because otherwise you could die pretty quickly in a fight. To be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about this mechanic yet. On one hand, it simplifies the gameplay loop by removing two stats that you need to manage. But on the other hand, it also removes a big part of what makes survival games fun, which is the challenge of trying to stay alive. Without that challenge, the game might not be as engaging as it could be. All in all, I had a lot of fun playing Atlas Reactor. It's a game that's still in early development, so there's bound to be some changes before it's released. But even in its current state, it's a lot of fun to play. The world is beautiful, the creatures are interesting, and the combat is exciting. I can't wait to see how the game evolves over time. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please leave a like or subscribe. It would really help me out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.